NFL rankings 2021, the top 20 guards. Next in the series of offensive players, obviously the offensive line can get a little boring to some people. I disagree. I think it's interesting, and more importantly, it's still really important because this is, at least in some part, what goes a long way towards determining who is good or not. And while guard, some people can think is kind of the least important position on offense. One, I think that's pretty clearly running back, but two, I disagree with that just in general. I think it's actually comparable to the other offensive line positions. I understand tackle and first pass protection is the most important, and I do agree with that. But I think the difference is less severe than people say, and it hurts your team real bad if you have someone who sucks at that spot, and it helps your team a lot if you have someone who's good. So that's important to remember this. So some notes, injuries not considered. This is how good the player is on the field. That's what this exercise is. It's about determining what actually makes a player good as opposed to, name recognition or highlights or whatever. It's about what actually makes a player good when they're on the field and who is the biggest positive for your team when playing, because I think that's just more interesting to look at. This was just for this season, not like who I would take the next 5 years or anything like that, just for this season. And it's who helps you win the most. So it's not necessarily who's the most technically gifted or who's the most athletic. It's just who provides the biggest positive when they're on the field for your team. Obviously, not fantasy rankings, it's offensive linemen, and the colors are tiers plus no rookies. I'll tell you how good they are once they get to the NFL. Until then, not too concerned about it. So first five out, Isaac Seumalo, Andres Pete, Jonah Jackson, Lane Taylor, James Daniels. Some interesting ones there. I'm not going to get too much into it in this video, of course, about the top 20. The main one here that I'll mention that was Jonah Jackson might end up a lot higher. I'm going to go back and review him some more as sometime in the offseason here still. So, yeah, that's just the one I'll mention there. So then we got the top 20. Starting at number 20, Lucas Patrick on the Packers. I don't know if it's a huge name. He only has been a starter really this last year. He played something here before that, but the guy's good. Yeah, the Packers really, really know what they're doing with offensive linemen. Obviously, he's the next in this line of guards that you're going to see. I mean, a ton of Packers or former Packers on this list, and there's a reason for it. They're really good at what they do. They identify talent really well. And Lucas Patrick, like I said, one of those. Now, why he's down here lower as a run blocker, he's pretty mediocre, but he just rarely loses in pass protection. And while at guard, that balance is closer, where run blocking is a little bit more important. Still important, so that's Lucas Patrick. Number 19, Kevin Zeiler. Some people are going to think this is low. I struggle to even put him this high. I think he gets really overrated for some reason. People, they kind of talk about him in this pantheon of really good guards just because he's been in the NFL as a starter for a while and some decent teams. And he's not bad. I mean, obviously he's in the top 20. I think he's really pretty good, but he does still have some issues. I mean, as a pass protector especially, he's really not perfect. He can get beat with some level of regularity. And as far as a run blocker, I mean, he's fine and he'll do fine on the Ravens, but he's not some demolisher of defensive linemen or anything. He's just kind of okay. Next, Andrew Norwell, really basically the same player, a little bit better though, better in pass protection and just stronger overall, although still not great, not a huge difference between the two. So then we have the tier jump. Next, Roger Saffold. Roger Saffold's good. He really is, but so there's a thing. Some offensive linemen, especially guards, they're just never going to lose quickly, off the line of scrimmage. And then there's some who will at times. Now, Roger Saffold definitely fits in that latter category. Most of the time, he's fine. He's better than fine. He's pretty good. But he does still have some notable issues with just kind of getting smacked off the line of scrimmage. It doesn't happen very often, hence him still being this high. But that's something to note as a difference between him and a lot of the guys around him. And, again, as a run blocker, while he's decent, he moves okay. He's just not elite, really, at any aspect of that. So still good, obviously, but not elite or anything. Next, Laken Tomlinson. Fairly similar player. He does a little bit more with strength as opposed to the finesse of Roger Saffold. But yeah, he's good. He loses in pass protection a little bit too much, but he knows what he's doing. He's definitely positive. Number 15, Dalton Risner. So you see on this list, there's a couple of Broncos here. And these guys are underrated because of the offense and quarterbacks they've been playing around, but they're good. I mean, Dalton Risner consistently wins in all phases as both a run blocker and a pass protector. He's really good. Now, really the difference with a lot of this tier versus the next tier, again, it's they do the same things. It's just the frequency at which they're able to do them. These guys in this purple or whatever it's here, 17 through 14 do all the things still, but they just lose a little bit more as opposed to the guys in front of them. And consistently not losing, I think, is probably the single most valuable skill an offensive lineman can have. So, yeah, Dalton Risner, Richie Incognito next to him too. Both pretty similar. They lose just a little bit too much to be ahead of it, but they're still really definitely positives. Then we got a tier jump next, David Castro. Another really good player. Now, he's an interesting one in terms of what he is in practice, because on the Steelers, they ask their offensive linemen to do such weird things, especially run blocking, that it can be hard to tell what his like real skill level is. He could be a lot higher than this if they asked him to do different things consistently. They don't, which is why he's here. But he's a player. Yeah, he wins a lot, but he kind of has some issues with losing quickly. It just doesn't show up a lot because he's on the Steelers. I don't know if he would do it more or less on another team, but more of an interesting thing with him. And also, as an like, he kills people in double teams, but as a one-on-one like run blocker at the line of scrimmage, he's actually not great at that, which I think is another thing that keeps him down here. Then we have Brandon Sherf. Brandon Sherf maybe a little low for some people, but my thing with Brandon Sherf is that he actually fairly similarly to David Castro isn't actually like this dominant guy at the line of scrimmage. He's fine and he moves pretty well. I like him as a space blocker, but as actual just one-on-one guy, he's just not as good as really any of the guys ahead of him. And as a pass blocker too, I mean, he's not like perfect the way that people describe him. He's still really good. Obviously, he's almost top 10 here, but just remember, these guys they're still not perfect at this point. Nobody is, of course, but they still lose with enough frequency for it to like be noticeable. Next, we have maybe the biggest surprise so far, Graham Glasgow on the Broncos, formerly from the Lions. That guy is really good. No one on this list so far wins to the degree that he does. Graham Glasgow will kill people in both pass blocking and run blocking. I mean, he will bury people, and he's really good at it. He does it a lot, too. He actually is going to probably lose the most of anyone in this tier in terms of getting beaten off the line of scrimmage or anything like that, which I know I kind of counteracts what I said earlier about not losing frequently is probably the most successful skill or most important skill. But some things with that one, he doesn't lose very often anyway. And especially as a run blocker, he's good enough, like better than the guys behind him enough that I think it puts him ahead of him. Now they're really, really similar. This tier is like, these guys are borderline identical as far as what they provide for your team. But yeah, then we have Chris Lindstrom, who's kind of the opposite of Glasgow in terms of he like never ever loses, but he doesn't really kill people. Chris Lindstrom, yeah, really good. He actually did end up being a first round pick. Didn't necessarily look like that after his rookie year. He missed a lot of time injury, but he's a good player. And the Falcons, you'll see, are going to end up with a lot of offensive linemen in these around these top 20, 30 lists. So they have a lot of talent on offense, and Chris Lindstrom is definitely a part of that. So then we get the tier gap, and now we're into like the real big boys. These guys at this point are all elite players who are going to provide constant, very positive impacts to your team. Number 9, Wyatt Zeiler. I'm glad that people finally saw how good he was. I thought going into the year that he was really, really good. Now, I didn't think he was quite like a top 10 player, and I do think he got better, especially just with the way the Browns play, really leaned into his skill set. But he's a player that I thought was really good going into the year. It was definitely a positive. That ended up obviously being the case. And yeah, I mean, he just consistently wins to a positive degree. Now, he's not like the killer that I think some people thought he was during this last year. Like, people were talking about him as like the best guard in football. I would pretty strongly say no. I don't think he was the best guard in his own team. But that's not a detriment. He's still a top 10 player. He's an elite player at the guard position. He's really, really good. Then we have Jenkins, another really, really good player. He is, of everyone we talked about, probably the best at actually getting up and down the line of scrimmage, getting into the second level of the defense. Really good to that type of stuff. He's like borderline elite as a pass blocker. His only issues, as opposed to the guys in the couple tiers ahead of him, are as a pass protector. He's not like perfect. He loses more than they do, but it's still, I mean, we're talking, single-digit percentages of difference between these guys. Then we have Shaq Mason on the Patriots. A player who was hurt for a ton of last year, and I can see why people would maybe be a little bit lower on him. But yeah, when he plays, he's really, really, really good. He's actually very similar to again, all the players in this tier are very similar. He's especially similar to the guy ahead of him. But yeah, they're just dominant run blockers. Pass blockers are really good, and while they do lose quickly a little bit, literally everyone on this list except for like 2 players does. So, yeah, you get what you get. But, yeah, really positive player. Joel Bitonio next. Like I said, same thing, just a little bit better. He's really good. And with the Browns right now, this is the 3rd top 10 offensive lineman that we talked about between their tackles and then both guards here. I mean, they're really, really good, and they're going to be good for a long time because these guys are no joke. They are dominant players, and Joel Bitonio is a huge contributor to the Browns' success. So then we get into the second tier here, which is going to start with Zach Martin. Now, I know a lot of people think of Zach Martin as a top 3 guard, and I pretty strongly disagree. Now, he's top 5. I still think he's really good, but I mean, there's pretty clearly a difference, I would argue, between him and the guys ahead of him. He, as a run blocker especially, he fits in that category of guys who, at the line of scrimmage, he's like just kind of okay. I mean, he's better than that. He's above average, but he's not like elite. He doesn't just knock people out. He doesn't move people out of the hole that well. He does fine. He's still good at it for sure, and he can be really useful in a double team, convoy blocking to the second level, all that stuff. He's pretty good at it, but as an actual like individual, as far as what he's providing, the run blocking aspect of things, he's just okay. As a pass blocker, he's really, really good. He doesn't have quite the win rate that a couple of the players ahead of him does, but he's way at the top there. He's really good. So, yeah, obviously very valuable player, but compared to other guys in the top 5, I don't think he's quite there. So we have Joe Tooney. Joe Tooney's everything that people talk about Zach Martin being in terms of a guy who, like, never loses. Now, he doesn't have quite the, like, upshot of winning plays that Martin does, but like I said, not losing almost always more valuable than, like, overkilling winning. So that's why Joe Tooney's a little bit higher than him, although you're going to provide really similar things. So we get into the top tier here. Number 3, Ali Marpet. This guy is nuts. He is so good. And he was a huge reason for the Buccaneers being as good as they are because, frankly, I mean, their tackles are really good. And he's really good. But the rest of their offensive line, who we'll talk about later, Ryan Jensen, and especially their other guard spot, were like – I shouldn't talk. Ryan Jensen's pretty good, but their other guard spot especially can be an issue. But Ali Marpet makes up for a ton of that. He's so good, especially, I mean, as a run blocker, he kills people constantly, very rarely loses, again, as I've been talking about with all these guys at the high end here in pass protection. And, yeah, he's just a super big positive. So then number 2, and this is probably the most controversial one by far. Yes, I know I spelled his first name wrong. Quentin Nelson. Why is he not number 1? So, right, most people, when they see Quentin Nelson's name, they say, okay, that's a first ballot Hall of Famer already guaranteed. He's the best, like, offensive lineman in football, that type of thing. No, he's really, really, really good, for sure. But I don't think he's meaningfully different than Ali Marpet, the player behind him, in terms of they both kill people in the run game very consistently. As either part of a double team or moving to the second level, they consistently eliminate defenders really well. They both move very, very well in space. Nelson a little bit better, hence why he's a little bit higher. But don't get it in your head that Quentin Nelson's perfect, right? And this is important to remember this now with this exercise. Obviously, he's still number 2. I still think he's really good. But he does get beaten off the line of scrimmage way more than he is given credit for. He gets juked out of his shoes, like, kind of a lot. Well, not a lot compared to, like, other guards, but a lot compared to his reputation. I mean, there are quick defensive tackles, especially, I mean, you've seen, like an Aaron Donald type or Chris Jones. Like, they kind of give him the business sometimes. Now, it's rare still. It's only, like, probably once or twice a game. But that does happen. And that's the difference between him and the guy in number 1. And before I go to that, I'm going to have people remember that this is about fully healthy on the field right now, what they provide. And at number 1, Brandon Brooks on the Eagles. And I could have argued for putting him in his own tier here. Brandon Brooks does everything that Quentin Nelson and Ali Marpet does, but you take out, like, every instance of losing ever, basically. Like, as opposed to 1 or 2 a game for, like, Nelson or Marpet, Brandon Brooks is, like, 1 or 2 every, like, 6 weeks. I mean, this guy is insane when he's on the field. Now, he missed all of last year, obviously, with an injury, and he is older at this point. I can see how once he's back on the field, he might not be at the same level, but until I see that, I'm not going to go with that. So as of right now, I mean, yeah, Brandon Brooks, he's crazy when he's on the field. The guy just doesn't lose ever. And like I said, that's the most important thing you can have because that means your offense is literally guaranteed a positive from a spot and a big positive, which is it's just wild what he provides as far as offensive value, even at the guard position. So that's the top 20. Obviously, some people are going to ask us what to say about the Quentin Nelson thing, but I feel pretty goddamn strong about that. I still think he's really good. He's still number 2 in the whole NFL, so chill. But yeah, top 20 guards in the NFL 2021.